It started with silence, the kind that doesn't demand attention but slowly settles into the corners of your life like dust you never noticed gathering. The first time I saw him was at orientation. Ayaan. He stood near the back, sketchbook tucked. Under his arm, headphones half on, half off. He didn't speak much, and when he did, it was in short, precise phrases, like he didn't want to waste words. Something about that intrigued me. I'd always been the kind to blend in, to laugh at the right time, to avoid questions that scratched too deep. But Ayaan, he made silence feel like conversation. We shared a few classes, sat 2 rows apart, then one, then side by side. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Slowly, like rain soaking into dry ground. I started noticing things, how he never rushed, how he watched people when they weren't looking, how he smiled to himself after writing something down. One afternoon, while waiting out a sudden downpour under the campus awning, we stood shoulder to shoulder. Still no words, just the sound of rain and the steady beat of time. I glanced over. His sketchbook was open. A rough pencil drawing of the scene before us, umbrellas, blurred puddles, reflections, and 2 figures under the same awning. One of them looked a lot like me. "You draw everyone?" I asked, voice low. "Only when something feels still," he replied, not looking up. I didn't know what he meant, but it stayed with me. That was Ayaan's way. He'd say something simple, and it would echo for days. Soon coffee breaks turned into quiet lunches. Not every day, not all the time, but enough for me to notice that I missed it when it didn't happen. We didn't talk about feelings. We didn't need to. There was something in the way he passed me the sugar without asking, or how he remembered I hated olives but liked extra ice. He made space for me without trying to change me. And that was new, unsettling even. There were no confessions, no dramatic moments, just glances held too long, hands that brushed too often, and a silence that wrapped around us like a warm scarf in winter. I told myself it was just a strong friendship. A deep, rare one, yes, but still just that. I had never looked at another man that way. I didn't now, not really. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. But somewhere between shared playlists and library study nights, Ayaan became my favorite part of the day, and yet I never said it aloud, because naming it meant owning it. And I wasn't ready for that. Not then, not yet. But even in silence, some bonds grow louder than words, and mine with Ayaan was beginning to roar. By the 3rd month, our lives had slipped into a rhythm neither of us acknowledged aloud. We met without planning. A glance across the corridor, a raised brow near the cafe, no words, yet we always knew where to find each other. It was effortless, comfortable, dangerously so. One evening, while walking back from a group project, Ayaan invited me to his place. No one else was home. We sat on his bed, legs crossed, backs against the wall, the low hum of music from his speakers filling the gaps in conversation. His room smelled faintly of old books and something warm, like cinnamon or cedar. "You ever feel like you're carrying too much?" he asked, eyes fixed on the ceiling. I shrugged. "Sometimes, but I don't think about it much," he nodded, slowly. "I do, all the time." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. Still, I wanted to. There was always more under the surface with him, like he only ever showed the calm above the water while storms churned beneath. That night, he showed me his favorite sketch. Half-finished, delicate lines forming 2 figures lying under a tree, their fingers almost touching. I didn't ask who they were. I already knew. It should have scared me. Maybe it did. But fear wasn't what I felt when he looked at me. It was peace. And something else I didn't yet understand. One day, after a long study session at the library, we found ourselves sitting alone in the campus courtyard. It was late, quiet. Ayaan was shivering, wearing only a thin hoodie. I took off my jacket and draped it over his shoulders without thinking. He didn't thank me. He just looked at me. For a moment, eyes darker than usual, searching. "Sometimes I wish things were simpler," he murmured. My throat tightened. "Yeah, me too." The words hung between us like fog, dense and cold. Then it happened. Barely a moment. His hand brushed mine as we reached for the same pen. Neither of us pulled away. My skin tingled where his fingers lingered. My breath hitched, but before either of us could speak, he moved his hand and turned away. The spell broke. I said nothing, heart thudding like a drum in my chest. That night I couldn't sleep. His touch haunted me more than it should have. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. I wasn't supposed to question. But I was, and he had started to pull away. Subtle changes, fewer messages, shorter replies, smiles that didn't quite reach. His eyes! He was retreating. I could feel it, and the worst part, I didn't know how to stop him. Guilt is strange. It doesn't always arrive when you do something wrong. Sometimes it sneaks in when you're trying too hard to be someone you're not. After that night in the courtyard, everything shifted. I told myself it was just tension, emotional exhaustion, maybe a touch of misplaced gratitude. I convinced myself I needed space, from him, from whatever this had become, from the confusion spiraling in my chest. So I started spending more time with Priya, a girl from our lit class. She was loud, spontaneous, easy to be around. She laughed at my jokes, touched my arm when she spoke, leaned in close. It felt familiar, normal, and that was the point. At least, that's what I told myself. Ayaan noticed, of course he did. He saw everything. He stopped waiting for me outside class, stopped replying to messages right away. His eyes lost their softness, replaced with something harder, guarded. One afternoon I saw him sitting alone in the cafeteria, sketchbook closed, headphones on. I passed by without stopping. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to see the disappointment in his eyes. Maybe I didn't want to admit what I was doing to him, or to myself. Later that week, I kissed Priya after a party. There was no spark, just motion, just proof. But the next morning, Ayaan wasn't in class, or the day after. When I finally saw him again, it was across the street, laughing with a boy I didn't recognize, someone taller, louder, with arms covered in ink and a voice that carried. Something inside me twisted. I didn't realize I was staring until Ayaan's eyes met mine. He held my gaze for a moment, then looked away. That night I couldn't stand it anymore. I messaged him. One word. Talk? He agreed. We met at our usual spot under the awning, fitting somehow for the conversation that followed. I shouldn't have expected anything, he said quietly. That was my mistake. I stayed silent, unable to look at him. I loved you, he continued, voice steady, even when I knew you'd never say it back, even when you made me a secret I wasn't supposed to feel proud of. The word love hit me like a wave, overwhelming, suffocating. I didn't mean to hurt you, I whispered. But you did. A car passed, its headlights briefly lighting his face. I saw the pain there, not dramatic or desperate, just quiet resignation, like a door had gently closed. I reached for him, but he stepped back. Don't, he said. Not now. Not when it's too late. And then he left. No goodbyes. No promises. Just footsteps fading into the night and a silence heavier than any words we'd ever shared. Time didn't rush after he left. It crawled. Everything went back to routine, but nothing felt the same. Priya and I fizzled out in days. No drama, no heartbreak. Just silence, familiar in its emptiness, but nothing like the silence I once shared with Ayaan. Weeks passed. I kept expecting him to show up at our usual table, to send a sarcastic message, to sketch me from across the room. But he didn't. And for the first time I had to sit with the reality of what I'd done, not just to him but to myself. I avoided mirrors, avoided memories, but I couldn't avoid the ache in my chest every time I heard a song we used to share or walked past the places we used to sit, shoulder to shoulder, without saying a word. One night I opened my notebook, something I hadn't touched since he left. I tried to write how I felt, but the words came out jagged, raw. I remembered something he once told me. Stillness doesn't mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it's where the truth grows. I realized then I hadn't just lost a friend. I'd betrayed the only person who ever saw me completely, who listened to the parts I didn't say out loud. And maybe I wasn't ready to name what we had, but it mattered. It changed me, and I needed him to know. So I went to the cafe where we first shared coffee, hoping, stupidly maybe, that he'd be there. He wasn't. But I left something for him with the barista. A letter, no poetry, no grand apologies, just the truth. I don't know what label fits me, but I know what we had was real, and I know I hurt you because I was scared of what I was feeling. You made me feel seen in a way no one else ever has, and I miss you, not just what we had, but you. I was wrong. You were never a phase or a question. You were an answer I wasn't brave enough to accept. I don't expect anything from you now. I just needed you to know. I don't know if he read it. He never replied. But a month later, I found a sketch slipped into my locker. It was us sitting under the campus awning, heads tilted toward each other, eyes closed. No titles, no captions, just stillness. And something in my chest loosened. Maybe we wouldn't go back. Maybe we wouldn't ever be the same. But I would. Carry him with me. The boy who taught me that silence can speak, that love doesn't ask for permission, and that sometimes the most honest truths are the ones we're most afraid to say. He changed me, and maybe that was the love story all along.